if you will. You can go to this website right now and, mess around. Plagiarism.fyi, I built this one this summer. Like if you guys know, I'm sure there's a lot of CS students here, but if you're familiar with Moss, the like plagiarism checker that like, stops you from plagiarizing code, I built a website that breaks it. Like this like defeats Moss. If not, I'm not advocating for plagiarism here, but the idea was basically Moss. I spent like a day or two reading about Moss and reading the white paper behind it, and it turns out Moss is like very weak. It's a very crappy system. It's very smart, but it has a lot of failures. And so my idea is like I want to build a better system, and so I set up this website which lets you kind of cheat against Moss, but because of it, we're going to building a data set of all the people that are using it and using it to build a better model. So just kind of a project I built this summer. And then more generally, this is the project I'm here going to talk about today, which is this startup I built in the last summer, right after the senior year of high school, right before I came to Michigan. And we did really, really well. We closed an acquisition deal last February. So it was a great experience. And I'm going to talk more about that in a second. Yep. So, but before that, I kind of want to talk about like, what do I mean when I'm talking about the word builder? And what do you mean as a whole, right? Like, who is a builder? What is a builder, right? I think in general, we're not just talking about CS students here. It's more everyone, right? I think a builder is basically someone who executes on anything in the world that wasn't there before, right? So this is not just CS majors or engineers or artists, right? Like it's literally everyone, right? Of course, in this talk, I'm talking about the context of a kind of a software company here, but I want to be clear, like my love for building, and I think a lot of people here is kind of subject agnostic, right? Whether it's running a coffee shop or creating a garden, like creating a community here at Michigan, that is building, right? And that's what kind of what I'm talking about here. Yeah, but also like it's not really easy, right? Like building is quite difficult in general, and it's not easy to have an idea and then try to have a vision and then execute it into reality. Like it's quite difficult. You have to lead and kind of do something on your own, right? But it's also like far easier to work on things that already exist, right? And this is what 99% of the people in the world do, which is obviously not an issue, right? It's more that it's kind of brave to do something different, right? Yeah, to be a builder is to kind of venture into the world and build something new. So a couple reasons on like why should I build and why do I build, right? And first thing is kind of it's kind of a natural instinct, like self-expression is like one of the most beautiful things you can do, right? It's also just a really good strategy if you want to kind of like get a job in the world because you're not letting someone else qualify you for the position you want, right? So because of this, you kind of can jump up the ranks by declaring yourself, I guess I am the chief product officer, and then you work there for a couple of years and it succeeds, and then you kind of qualified yourself rather than kind of slowly walking up the ranks like everyone else is, right? And also just having ownership in something that, you're creating is honestly financially pretty smart, and so that's a small recommendation, right? And also just in general, and most importantly, it's the most impactful way to kind of create and have an effect on the world. There's so many inefficiencies everywhere, and you realize that, and a good phrase is this fact that like it was easier to build Amazon than it was to reform Sears, right? And it was easier to build SpaceX than it was to kind of lobby to Congress to change NASA's budget, right? In so many ways, the best thing you can do and to create an impact in the world is not join and change. It's create something new that kind of it changes the whole kind of paradigm. And then so I'm going to kind of go over how I sold my company and kind of go through that entire story from beginning to end. So yeah, I mean, for years, I never built anything. I started projects, I never finished them. I didn't really learn how to code. I mean, I only really learned how to code like senior year of high school. As soon as I actually started my startup, I didn't know beforehand. And so coronavirus hit in my senior year of high school. And because of that, I didn't want to waste my time. I was like, I have a ton of time in my life that I didn't have before. And like, I'm not just going to sit around and play games all the time. And so I started building projects for people. So like products for people, for my friends, stuff that I wanted and stuff that I had experience in. Yeah, so the key point here is basically kind of take your time. This is advice I give to everyone. In the sense that like a lot of reasons why all the successful people in the world start young is the fact that, and it's not just that that's kind of a fact, it's also the fact that the only people you see in the world right now who are successful already took the 3 years or 4 years it took to get to that point, and you just didn't ever see that, right? And those people just started a bit earlier than you. And also like, a lot of my friends aren't exceptional, they're just early. I think that's a good thing to remember, which is like, yeah, be okay with taking a couple years here. And you don't see the people who are just learning right now, they're going to be exceptional in 2 or 1 year, right? And also a reason why a lot of successful people are young is the fact that when you're young and you're just messing around, you have a much higher ability to explore. You're not like, I want to build a startup, and you're going to like be super intentional. Like, screw it. Like, I kind of like coding. It seems kind of interesting. Or like, I like design. I'm just going to mess around and like mess around with my friends and explore and learn. And you learn so much better. You're like taking the time to get the experience, taking time to get the skills, right? And learning the basics, I think, is another important thing to do, right? Of course. And so also everyone here has a lot of time on their hands, more than you're going to have later in your life. So this is a great time to just mess around, learn something new, jump into something you don't know. And also the payoff of doing this is immediate for you. Like if you start learning something new, you're going to have fun, you're going to learn something, you're going to feel like you're making progress immediately, but it's not external. The time for external, social, and kind of other payoff is going to be about 2 to 3 years. So like I might be learning a bunch, but it's going to take a while for other people to recognize it, right? Just be okay with that. Um, Things that kind of got me going building, and I think this is an important point. For one, join Twitter. Like actually, this is like a weird thing I'm telling everyone, but it is really, really, really valuable to join Twitter because this is where a lot of the top young builders are in the world. And being able to follow them and not only follow them, but directly talk to them is incredibly valuable. If you don't know who to follow on Twitter, I actually run a platform called Colossus. You can go here. There's a bunch of lists of some of the top 50 young builders in the world. If you want to go, just jumpstart. Colossus.fyi. I'll come back to that later. And then things that got me going again is like join a community of fellow peers. This is really, really important. For me, it was in COVID, and so I joined Discord servers for like young entrepreneurs. But for you guys, it can be V1. I wish I had V1 when I was building this stuff. It has so many people who are really creating in the world, and you can just kind of sit down and talk to and scrape their brain. And the other thing is start just to mess around and build fast, right? Don't kind of be super intentional or try to build a giant startup. Just mess around. The first project is definitely not going to be the one that succeeds. It's going to be a third or the fourth or the fifth, right? I had a failed startup before I did this one. So just take your time, keep going through it. I also know a friend. The other thing is kind of being naive. If I can say the one thing that I think a lot of the top builders in the world end up having as a trait is naivety in some way, in the sense that they don't kind of imagine a lot of difficulty in the things they're going to learn. I know I have a friend who's 19 and decided to, he really liked space, wanted to build a space startup, moved to San Francisco, raised $2 million and taught himself everything about the space industry. He did not know anything about it. Of course, he's a very smart guy, but in general, he had some naivety around the fact of like, I don't need to take the classes. I can just learn on the internet and learn fast and take the experience, right? And so actually, I think this is really, really, really important, right? Like, I don't know, I'm not I'm like in a lower CS class than probably most of you guys in this room, but in general, I was like, hey, the Moss system seems kind of interesting. I know I haven't read a white paper before, but I can learn it. I'll figure it out. So I just kind of went through it and I figured it out. Yeah. And so after this, I kind of went through this process and kind of formalized a team remotely. And so I decided to kind of get some friends on Discord and just kind of start building really fast. Started user interviews and started building cool projects. Yeah, so messing around in the group, right? Decided to start a group and kind of build fast together, ship a bunch of projects. At least one will work, right? If I just build and learn fast, like one's gonna stick, right? The kind of fast and easy and accessible project was the things I was doing, right? So like, what can I build in 1 week or 2 weeks and test immediately and get in front of people's hands and see if it works, right? So build minimum viable product, test fast, keep going if it doesn't work. Yeah, the Discord API. So I did spend a lot of time on Discord because this is coronavirus and because I had all these communities online. So I just kind of hung out there and was spending a lot of time there. I ran some Discord servers. I realized that the API was super open. So I was like, hey, like this is kind of interesting. I spent a bunch of time on this platform. They have a really easy to API to get. So I just downloaded like an entire chat history from a Discord server in like 2 minutes and like shipped an experiment where I like did some like data analysis on it and posted it on Twitter and people loved it, right? So I got a bunch of attention on Twitter. People really liked it. Easy way to kind of test whether people enjoyed something. This is the kind of key point I want to say here, which is domain knowledge, right? Everyone in this room probably has some certain area that they know a lot about. And if you focus on that area, your chances of success are far higher than everyone else in the world, because the only people who honestly could have competed with me in the Discord analytics space was really me and probably like 10 or 20 other people who had this experience. Like at the end of the day, breaking into kind of understanding domain knowledge is very, very hard. As I said before, being naive about topics, that's about things you can learn in general, right? Like I have a friend who's building in the healthcare data space, right? Which is this kind of very arbitrary space of the fact that like because of regulatory approval, you can't link data together very easily. So if you're doing advertising, it's very difficult. Do I understand that space? Would I ever be able to build a product in that space? No. I mean, I could maybe put in the 2 years to understand that, but he already has it. So the number of people he's competing with is very, very low. And so I had a lot of experience on Discord. And also learning to code is easy. I could learn that anywhere, right? And then leveraging the Discord ins out was kind of really hard. Like people couldn't really get this information very fast. And in general, I looked around the space and it was very poor utility, right? So using your domain knowledge is something that's really important, right? Whether you know some specific space. I was talking to a guy at our last V1 event. And he was like, I was very into Magic the Gathering. Like I went pro in that. I played a bunch. I'm like, great, that's a great way to build, because there's so much probably innovation that could happen in that space. And how many people know about that and try to build something in there? It's very, very, very few. So leveraging domain knowledge is something that I'd really want to make sure you guys remember. Then I formalized a team remotely. So I recruited friends on Discord to join because I really liked this project. It seemed to get traction. We launched the MVP fast, and we started a conversation with the community managers on the platform. Then we incorporated the company. If you want to incorporate, there's a bunch of services online where you can pay like a couple $100 as soon as you're serious, and then you can kind of create a company that's fully incorporated, right? And then I just spent all summer working. Yeah, it was just kind of super fun to build something that people would love. I didn't really expect success. I was not kind of building with the mind of like, how can I make the most money or build something that, that makes kind of create success or makes me feel good. It was like, well, I was building something that people really liked, and that was very, very exciting to create something for yourself, right? I honestly thought I was going to quit as soon as I came to Michigan. This was the senior, my summer, my senior year of high school, and so I kind of didn't imagine much of a future there, but it was just really fun. I spent a lot of time working though. So like, I mean, I remember spent like 16-hour days for like a whole weeks before the launch, right? And so just be prepared to commit and really kind of go forward, but also just have some relaxation around the fact that like it might take a lot of time. You don't really know how it's going to end up. But also, I just learned so much by building a product that people liked, right? It's hard to kind of like just sit down and study something, but I wasn't learning coding because I wanted to learn coding. I was learning coding because we had to ship a feature tomorrow, right? And that actually having something to work on that teaches you something is so important. And then we got an acquisition offer at the end of the summer. So I was tweeting it about it a lot, and a CEO of a larger community startup saw it on Twitter. So this is about a month after our version 2 launch, and we get an offer. This is right before I was about to go off to college. This is kind of, I expected it to disappear, and honestly, this is just a good amount of luck, right? It was not, we built a cool product. We had a bunch of customers. A lot of them were in the crypto space, which I'll go into in a second. But in general, it wasn't making tons of money or being a super exciting project in general. But we saw something, and I think we ended up attracting someone who realized that we're building a cool project. We're a very passionate team, and we're building something that people wanted. Yeah, so this is another key point, which is share your work, right? Like constantly talk about your work, right? Spend like I'd say like it's so important how much opportunity you can get in the world if you just talk about what you're doing. Like ultimately too, if you're at this stage, which I think a lot of you are, even my stage, you're not building something that needs to be kind of kept secret. Nobody's going to steal your idea, right? In general, talking and building in public and kind of sharing the world with the world of what you're working on is can create so much value, whether that's new users or investors or honestly an acquisition, right? Like you don't know what's going to come from your sharing, right? And also the important thing to remember here is like we spent a long time. I mean, it was like probably 6 months trying to get this product out, and we couldn't really find traction. We couldn't really find monetization super easily, and so like just spend equal time building and growing. So if you build a product for 3 to 6 months, assume at least 3 to 6 months of you going to have to kind of ship it and talk about it and grow it, right? Don't assume like, hey, I built this product and I immediately is going to sell it. No, it takes a long time. And then also don't underestimate your value from sharing, of course, right? That's one thing. And then also it can outweigh failure sometimes. Sometimes you might fail as a project, but something that you built that you're sharing because it can be very, very, very valuable. I built a chess engines project this summer and it was a failure. It sucked. It was a very bad chess engine. But I wrote an article and a guide on how you wouldn't copy me and also build a chess engine, and ended up getting 2 million views on people just kind of top of Hacker News, got a bunch of newsletters. A lot of people loved it, and like the sharing of that project was very, very valuable. My insights were really very valuable, but people got a lot out of it. But the project itself couldn't even beat my brother, right? So yeah, we closed the acquisition deal. I signed the documents in my Bates dorm room. It was a great funny experience. We negotiated hard for a good price, and at that point, I still hadn't met my co-founders in real life. We met on Discord. I called them. We were working asynchronously the entire time. We were bootstrapped the whole way. We didn't raise any money. And I think that's the other thing to remember, which is if you can just do things for free, you don't need to raise money. You don't have to. Just like learn and build fast and like build a product and just test, right? Like all the other boilerplate, even incorporating company, we didn't honestly really need to do until the last moment. Like we just kind of build and just focus on the creating, not the other kind of legal or the vision or the monetization immediately, right? And the other thing that's important is, all my co-founders and we were all together and we're all working online, right? So that required a lot of initiative from people to, just go with people they've never met in person and commit to a project and work just so many hours of the entire summer on a vision and just, have no promise or no expectation. Like nobody was telling anyone what to do. Nobody was kind of instructing everyone. It was just a lot of people's initiative. So that kind of bias for action is really, really important. So yeah, bias for action. It was like we weren't getting paid. It was a big risk, right? I mean, like we were learning a lot, but like it was still like we weren't getting paid. We had no expectation of real success, but it was still like we had a vision and we were just gonna risk it on building a cool project, right? Nobody told us to work. We all worked asynchronously. So a lot of times, we're across the country. I mean, one of my friends is in Oregon, one's in New Jersey. I was in Los Angeles at the time, right? No, we all worked asynchronously when we could, right? And like that kind of bias reaction, which is like really building and taking initiative that, without instruction is really important. So I didn't know web development either. I kind of learned as I went. Two of my partners who joined the company, they had done a gap year where they worked as front and back end devs, and so I just tagged along with them. Like, listen, you guys code, and I'll just read and watch it, and just kind of go along as you do and try to copy you. And instead of that, I also taught myself design instead of hiring. So I messed around like a couple years back and building like a clothing brand and designing some stuff from them. I used some designer programs, but we didn't have a designer either for the app, and we needed kind of some UI design. I'm like, screw it, I can just learn. And so I just sat in Figma and kind of built a bunch of projects, and it wasn't great at the start. I'll tell you. I'll show you the designs later if you're interested. You can come up and ask me. But the whole point was I just kept going and going and going and going until I learned something, right? And that initiative of the fact that like I was barely technical, I barely even knew design, but I'm like, screw it, I can learn both of them. That kind of naivety is really, really important. And another thing is risk your time, right? So what did we all do? We all just risked our time, right? Like I asked a lot of people to join this, right? I mean, I asked a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of coworkers, a lot of people around me. I was like, listen, like come join. I'll give you a piece of the company. I don't care. Just help me out. Like I have this vision. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the thing. I just want to build something that's exciting. I asked a lot of people to join, and there's nobody committed. Like a lot of people said, like, sure, I might come along, or yeah, I'll join. And so I added them to the chat, and then they missed 2 meetings. They flaked after a couple of them, and I was like, listen, I'm not going to be kind of get on your back to make sure you come to these things. It's like whether you're going to come or not, right? And at the end of the day, it was a very, very successful endeavor for me and my partners. Yeah, people were scared to learn and jump in, right? I told them like, listen, like you're super smart. I had a bunch of really smart friends. I'm like, listen, you guys can join my company. You'll learn so much. You'll be of value. I'll literally give equity to you or pay you. But like people were just scared to jump in, right? Like when I literally would have taken anyone off the street to kind of help me in this project as long as they were committed, because that's kind of what I did, and I had partners that did that. Right now you have a lot of time. Like we're all in college, you have a ton of time on your hands. Gamble it, right? The whole point is to gamble it on something, right? Don't be afraid of commitment. And when you commit, make sure you commit hard, right? Like I was ready to commit on a project and I decided, screw it, I'm going to commit for the summer. If it doesn't work at the end of the summer, it's fine. I'll just go to college. But when I was committing hard. I was working all the day, and it kind of paid off for me, right? Yeah, so also just kind of in general, that's kind of my whole story. And now I want to kind of talk about how would you get started, right? And so I build a new project at least every month. I mean, it's like maybe I build 2 projects in 1 month and none in the next, but in general, that's how much I average. Yeah, everything starts small, right? So like next startup, like we'll start as a small project. Don't try to be like, I'm going to build the next Apple. How do I imagine that? Like that's not how it works, right? Like, most of these companies started off as like people building in their garage, building something cool, right? It was starting small and then getting bigger first. So start messing around, start small. Don't try to kind of think of something massive first. Like really start with the building, end with the kind of the architecture and the marketing in some sense. And then I also explore and learn constantly. I'm always trying to learn something new. I'm doing a ton of different stuff this year. I'm trying to learn a bunch of different things. I'm trying to do some more AI and ML stuff right now. I have a project launching either tonight if I finish it, or maybe a couple of days from now. But all in that kind of space and learning, exploring constantly. And then so yeah, so the guide in this the steps I would say is just build anything at all. Just build things, right? Just move it really, really fast, right? If it doesn't work, move on to the next thing, right? The best thing you can do is just fill your time by creating. The other thing is, motivation and idea first, and then learn as a side effect. A lot of people I know go into this trap of, I want to learn how to code. It's to just sit and like on Code Academy, or sit and like watch YouTube videos, and like it's not a good way. Like I mean, ultimately, none of the people I know who are successful did it because like they really just were really hard workers. They did it because they enjoy it, right? Like I'm not here because I decided like I was just gonna commit to this project and like just gruel through something. I loved actually the code. I like to build things for people. If you can figure that out, that's how you'll succeed, right? Yeah, don't wear yourself out. Yeah, stay light. Also, like just kind of don't jump into something super deep or super complex. Go to like you want to have constant wins. Like do something small and then build onto it, right? Don't kind of build something for 6 months and only have a payoff at the end, right? Start simple, start stupid. My first NDA, I'll go back to that if you guys want to build that. That took a couple hours, but I felt great about that project. It actually taught me a good amount about React development and how to build fast. So that was a really fun experience. So literally, honestly, the stupider things you kind of get excited about, but you think are dumb, but who cares? They're exciting, like you learn something. And then no short versus long term. So like focus on like what you can build in terms of like, is this a project you're going to do for 1 or 2 weeks or 1 month? Or is this a project you're going to commit for a startup for 6 months or 1 year, right? And like really focus on like this, like extracting the value, right? And then leaving as soon as you don't really want to commit anymore, right? Like don't spend 6 months on a project that you're not going to commit to long term or isn't that valuable to you. So as soon as you've kind of extracted most of the learning value out of that, just leave, right? So optimize for your learning speed is kind of the next point here, which is like optimize for how much you're learning, right? Don't like, of course, always aim for success, but focus on like, am I learning and am I constantly doing something new? Because that's the best way to progress, right? And also, there's a lot more elsewhere. Um, there's a website called colossus.fyi if you want to go there. I can tell you about that later. Come to V1. There's a lot of great places to learn from there. There's so many other pieces of advice around the world, whether that's like YC Startup School or so many different places you can learn all these tips and tricks on how to get started. But ultimately, the main point is just build anything at all. Just kind of start creating stuff. You can reach out to me by joining V1 and hanging out with me. That's the best way to kind of meet. And I'd love to talk to everyone, of course. And then text me. You can text me. It's my number. Or you can follow me on Twitter, which is at Will DePue, which is my name. I'll go to the back part. Or you can just find me on campus or something. And I think that's it. Yeah. Let me go back to the start. Thank you.